everyone. Welcome back to another episode of my podcast. I'm Caroline Chen, and I'm a rising senior in high school. Today, I had the wonderful opportunity to speak with Mr. Andrew Davis, the head of school at Mount Tamalpais School, a K through 8 independent school in Marin County. I hope you enjoy our conversation. So, hi, Mr. Davis. Thank you again for taking the time to speak with
Yeah,
me today. I really appreciate it. So, before we get into more of an education and those topics, I wanted to ask you a bit about yourself. So, I'm
sure.
wondering, how did you first get interested in pursuing education, and did you have any idea this is what you wanted to do when you were in high school?
Yeah. First, thanks for having me on. This is a fun chance for me to reflect on some kind of bigger picture thinking about education and my own career. I have thought I wanted to be an educator for as long as I can remember.
Really?
I had amazing, really impactful teachers growing up, going to independent schools like Crystal, and then also to sleepaway summer camp in Maine that I started going to when I was 8 years old and pretty much went to as a camper counselor until I was 24. And I knew I wanted to be an educator. I knew I wanted to work with children. So for sure, when I was in high school, I was less planning on what my career will be, but more really enamored with, inspired by the amazing educators who I had as a teacher in high school.
Wow, that's so cool. Thank you for sharing that. That's actually a pretty rare answer I get because
Yeah.
most people I talk to are like, oh, I had no idea. Like, just
Yeah.
that came along. But it's so cool how you were just like, you knew that's what you wanted.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I resonate with that kind of as a high schooler. Like, I
Yeah.
don't know what I want to do with my life, but I feel like I know what I'm passionate about, and I'm just
Yeah.
very justified in.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I saw that when I was doing my research for this
Mhm.
conversation. You went to Stanford for your undergrad and
Mhm.
then went back to get your master's in education and an MBA. And I was wondering,
Yep.
what was that like, if you could take us through that? And were there
Yeah.
any particular skills or knowledge that you learned throughout the process that
Yeah, sure. When I graduated college, I knew that I wanted to become a teacher. So I went and became a teacher. And I don't remember this, but my now wife tells me that senior year in college, and that's when she and I met. I told her that I was going to become a head of school. And she's like, "What's that?" I was like, "Oh, it's the person who runs a private school." And she's like, "Oh, wow, okay. I don't know what I'm going to do with my life. I guess I'm going to get a CS job because I'm a CS major." And so I knew I wanted to be a teacher, got a job as a teacher. And as I was a teacher, I knew I wanted to move into leadership roles at schools. And I knew I needed to go to grad school in order to do that. So I began to investigate different grad school options, considered doing like a PhD in education or in education leadership. And really on a whim, I found the Stanford joint degree program between the GSB and the School of Ed. It was actually being out at a bar on a Friday night at like midnight that a friend of mine said, "You should come with me to this conference at Stanford tomorrow. It is all about education and business." And I guess I'd had enough beers to think that sounded like a good idea. So I went to that. And at the end of that day, there was a panel of recent grads from the joint degree program. And I went like, boom, that's what I should do. Right. And it really was a whim. Actually, last night I was hanging out with a guy who invited me to that conference. I wasn't even registered for it. And I wore the name badge of someone else who was registered and couldn't go.
yeah, and that's how you met Miss Sortino.
So then I went to the GSB, had an amazing experience. And I think what I got out of the GSB in terms of going back into education are three things. One, I learned to speak the language of business, particularly as a head of school. You are running a business. And two, all your bosses or many of your bosses, which are your board members, many of them speak the language of business, right? So I learned to speak the language of business and I learned how to code switch between the language of education and the language of business as I walked back and forth from the Coverly School of Ed to the Stanford GSB campus. I literally would code switch back and forth between those two. Two, I really was given a wonderful opportunity over 2 years to grow skills and reflect on both kind of some hard skills around modeling and being much more comfortable with data. And then two, really thinking about leadership. And then the final thing that I got out of my time at the GSB was a more or less unintentional affirmation of the direction that I wanted my life to go. So I was there with all these folks, Miss Sortino included, who were going into consulting and were going into venture and all these things. And I really felt inadequate, not as good. And I had two moments that really clarified for me that I was doing the right thing. One was in a class called Touchy Feely. It's an amazing GSB class. I guess it's interpersonal dynamics, but it's just simply known as Touchy Feely.
I love that.
A classmate of mine in this very small group, very intense format and forum shared, I'm so jealous of you because you clearly know what you want to do and you like what you want to do. I'm going to go into venture because that's what I'm supposed to do and I'll make a lot of money but I'm just doing that because that's what I'm supposed to do. And you're so lucky. And I was like, "Oh, okay." And then the other moment for me was between your first year and second year of business school, you do an internship in that summer, and I interviewed for a marketing job at Apple. And so I was in a kind of study carrel at the GSB interviewing with this guy at Apple. It was going to be for a iPod marketing job. It actually ended up being an iPhone marketing job because the iPhone was not out yet. It was coming out that next fall. And at the end of the 45-minute interview, he said to me, like, you need to go work in education in schools. You're clearly so passionate about that. Do you know the Hillbrook School? Because that's where my kids go to school, and they would love to have someone like you. And so just 2 points of affirmation, I think really gave me the confidence to go back into education full tilt and not look back and second guess that.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I think that's super powerful. And I feel like as a high schooler, I resonated with a few of the things he said. I haven't really done all of that stuff.
Yay.
It's kind of just like for me personally, I went into ninth grade feeling like I should do STEM, like I should do science research, what I saw
Mhm,
all the other upperclassmen doing,
mhm,
winning awards. So I was
mhm.
so set on that. I went to go work in a lab, I joined all the science clubs, and then halfway through, I realized, hey, like I love doing a teaching job I do every Sunday at a Chinese school, or I
Mhm.
love leading this program that I managed to get the opportunity to lead.
Yeah,
And it's kind of just figuring out that you don't have to do what everyone around you is
correct.
doing, and it's just what's made for you. And touching back on something you said,
Yeah.
that you really loved leadership, I was also just out of curiosity, did you know that in high school? Were you?
I think I just found myself in high school in leadership roles, but I wasn't like, oh, I need to get a leadership role or I love leading.
It's like you fall
It
into.
was more just someone's got to lead this thing that I care about. Someone has to be the captain of the cross country team, or someone has to take on this organization in high school. And I think that's very much been the case with still to this day. I join boards and all of a sudden I'm like asked to chair committees or chair the board. And it's just like I like doing things and I fall into a leadership role naturally.
Yeah, and I think that's honestly the best way to do it because I feel like the people who want to be leaders for the title, for the
Yeah.
LinkedIn experience,
Yeah, exactly.
they're not genuinely invested in the success they wanted. I feel like for me personally, within the few leadership roles I'm in, I had just so many ideas of the ways we could move forward, which led
Yep,
to step into the role. And yeah,
exactly.
I just think, yeah, that's also something
Yeah.
super important. And I feel like for a lot of high schoolers now, it's kind of just people fall into the trap of I need to stack up for my college apps. I need to be doing this, that.
Yeah, and that's something that really I was struck by. Now this is 10 plus years ago in my final years at Crystal, so kind of 2013, 14, 15, 16, that time when Miss Sortino and I co-taught a class to seniors It was mostly seniors, a handful of juniors. Yeah, so we created the microeconomics and finance class and co-taught that together. And I was struck by two things. One was the number of juniors and seniors who are so pre-professional. I'm going to do this so that I can go to college here, have this summer internship, then go work in finance for 2 years, and I'm going to go to the GSB. And they just had this path. So one, I was just like, ah, it felt very focused on the end
Yeah.
and not enjoying the process at all.
The
And then
lit
the other thing that distinctly remember about teaching MiFi was in the waning weeks of that class, we hosted a series of guest speakers. And the idea was it's seniors, they're checked out. There's checked out as Crystal kids get, which is not very checked out. But let's do something a little bit different. So we brought in all of these different speakers, and they were largely parents in the Crystal community. And without any scripting on our part, the most common thread across all of these people who have crushed it in their careers was be authentically you. Don't follow the straight line to success. And no one better embodied that to me than Bob Peck, who he's had multiple kids go through Crystal. He was on the board of Crystal, runs a very successful hedge fund, a values-based hedge fund. And he talked about growing up in a small town in Texas. He was supposed to go to UT, but this teacher found this place called Princeton for him to apply to. He went. He was a philosophy major
Wow.
and just really let his interests and things just take him in life. He was not like, I'm going to crush it. I'm going to make a gazillion dollars. And this is the stepped path. And whether it was Bob or someone else, one of the other speakers said, I can hire hundreds, if not thousands, of Harvard to Wharton grads, and they will all think the same way. And I need a competitive advantage in the market. I need people who just think the way they think, right? And so that to me is, I love running a kindergarten through eighth grade school in part because I don't have to grapple with this as much. That to me is the thing that I would most want high school students to be thinking about. And maybe you're facing the pressure of families, parents, and grandparents. But also, I think a lot of times you're facing the pressure of peers.
Yes.
And the more you can tune out those pressures and do what is authentically interesting to you, that makes you stand out,
Yeah.
right?
I agree with that so much. I just had everything you said, I completely resonate with because
Yeah.
I think one thing that I've managed to have the opportunity to do last year was within this group that I managed to lead, which is we call it the Academic Student Council, and it's
Cool.
a few other leads. And I noticed that Crystal kids are so set on the linear path of success. They're like, oh, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna go to an Ivy. I'm gonna go to business school. I'm gonna go into BCG or something like that. So
Mm-hmm.
that led us to host an event. We called it the Career Connections event. And it was more of just like, inviting all these Crystal alums, parents, just people from all sorts of different backgrounds. We had people who did script writing, people who, I don't know if you know who he is, like Tyson Mao, who like
Yeah.
guy. We had psychologists, it was just all around. And they kind of shared, they got to host workshops that students got to sign up for. And then I think the message we were trying to convey not like, oh, this will help you find what you're passionate about. It's one of the important things we told all the guest speakers to say was like, I didn't imagine myself in this role 10 years ago. It's
Correct.
like conveying to students that
Yes.
you don't need to have.
This is not my plan since sophomore year of high school. And even though I knew I wanted to be a teacher, I was not like, I need to study this in order to become a teacher.
Yeah.
I was a religious studies major. That is
Mhm.
not a good thing to study to become a high school teacher or a middle school teacher.
Yeah.
You should study either English or history. you study something that you're going to then teach. But I was into religious studies. I
Yeah.
was really fascinated by Buddhism. I was really fascinated by early Christianity. I went and studied abroad in India and studied meditation traditions because it was interesting.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, that's so cool. I had one more thing I was gonna say.
Yeah,
What was I gonna say? Oh yeah, about peer pressure. Because I think going into next year, that's something that my group is gonna tackle. Because one thing I noticed a lot was like it's not all Crystal kids, but there's always a select few. It's like just going a bit off topic. I have a LinkedIn, but I use it as a resume that I can share with people. But at
sure.
the same time, there's other people my age that will post every single thing they have to they're like, junior year is over. I climbed a mountain and I turned around and looked at the AI organization I founded, or they keep posting. And it's just, what's the point of that? You're just making your peers around you stressed about not doing enough. And it's just creating such
Yeah,
a toxic environment. And you see all these East Bay, South Bay schools, huge public schools having insane mental health issues, suicide
right.
rates. That's just like
Sure, sure.
cultivating those environments through like creating a culture where this flexing and like bragging and just
Yep.
that's accepted. Like that's just so horrifying.
Yeah,
I think that's like just such a huge issue, right? Not just in those huge public schools, but among everyone, because I feel like a lot of the people who do this don't really realize like the small dopamine hit they get from like bragging and posting can
totally.
severely affect someone else. Personally,
Yeah,
I went through some pretty serious mental health issues like
yeah,
from January to April this year, second semester.
yeah,
Great timing.
yeah, great. Yeah,
Amazing timing. But it's just like seeing my peers do stuff like that, like the amount that affected me
yeah,
when I was in such like a crisis was so insane. And I
yeah.
think personally as a high schooler, it is so important that I was like, sorry, I've been talking for so long, but it's
No, no, it's great.
I
Yeah,
think I managed to do a program where I got to meet tons of other high schoolers in the South and East Bay from like Harker, Mission
yeah,
San Jose, those like huge
yeah,
insanely competitive school.
yeah,
And I just realized I am so lucky to go to Crystal School where if you brag about your test, you will be frowned upon and people will
yeah,
tell you to shut up. Like, I think
yeah,
it's so fortunate that
yeah.
even though like people still say, oh, Crystal's competitive, like they don't understand
Right. Yeah,
drastic
yeah.
difference.
And you know if this is true, but my sense is that authenticity is truly valued at Crystal. And I think that at the end of the day, authenticity is what makes people want to work with you,
Yes,
to work for you. They
yeah.
want people who are aligned, and
Mhm.
alignment in like head, heart, and hands, right? Like they want you follow people who are aligned individuals and authentic. And you cannot be aligned unless you're authentic.
Yes, I think you can't really do that if you're trying to fit an image of what you view as success. You have to
Correct. And so you can find people who what they're thinking about in the work that they're doing, but it's not aligned with their heart.
yeah.
And that stands out. And I think that fundamentally limits
Mhm.
people.
And I think that's particularly evident among high schoolers. It's
Yeah.
very to tell if someone's founded a nonprofit so that they could put on.
Oh, I just see so much of this stuff that
Yeah.
is created by people. And I'm just like, oh, you're just doing that
Yeah.
to pad a college
Yeah.
application.
And it's quite obvious at times. And I think,
Yeah. And the phrase race to nowhere, I think is so beautiful.
yeah. And I
Like,
think at the same time, it's not entirely their fault. It's just
no, no, no.
their
It's
competitiveness is driving them to feel the pressure to
correct.
that way. Yeah. And I
Correct.
think that's just something so special that Crystal has. And
Yeah.
I don't want really
Yeah.
to sound so deep, but I feel like
Yeah.
it's important that this gets maintained within our community because you see people doing
Yeah.
otherwise
Yeah.
already. And
Yeah.
yeah, personally, I find that really concerning
Agreed.
given what I've seen.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, that was like very
Yeah,
off,
please. Yeah. Yeah.
but thank you for sharing that. I think
Yeah.
that's powerful and something a lot of high schoolers really need to hear and fully understand the pressure of college.
Yeah.
And switching gears a little bit now, I wanted to ask you a bit about your journey through education because I
Sure.
You've served as Crystal's director of admissions, like Crystal's middle school. And like you just mentioned, you taught middle school history and you're now a head of school and you're
Mhm.
also on Crystal's school board. And there's so much. And I was wondering, have there been any particularly meaningful experiences throughout this journey that have really shaped the way you approach education as a whole?
Sure. As I mentioned, there were institutions and individuals from a young age through high school who were mentors, but not in the way of let me LinkedIn message them and ask them to be my mentor, and I will have a coffee with them once a quarter. Just authentically people who I was like, I want to grow up to be you. And so that very much pushed me in the education direction. And then I was definitely influenced in the years that I was teaching. I worked under two different heads of school, and I have kind of mental takeaways from each of them that definitely continue to inform who I am as a school leader. What I spent 2 years as the director of admissions. I listened briefly to a little section of Miss Sortino talking on the podcast with you. And if I remember correctly, she was talking about starting as the college counselor, a job for which I recruited her to Crystal to do that job. I remember walking around the courtyard on the Hillsborough campus, talking with her about how she should come do this director of college counseling job.
Oh, thinking about coming to Crystal, but you were the one that showed.
I was the one who called her and told her about the job and then convinced her. But
Wait, that's
I I similarly thought of the director of admissions job as like a 2 year consulting engagement of how can I impact this, affect this, improve it, build systems, systematize this, right? And then the opportunity to lead the middle school came up, and that was just like a perfect fit for me. And while if I wanted to run, so even in the head of school world, there's this sense that the more students you have at your school, or if it's K-12, or kind of the older the kids are that are in your school, the more successful you are. And compensation reflects that too, right? So people who, exact same size school, if it's a high school versus a K-8, the compensation will be 30 to 40% more.
oh, really? Wow. I
That's because you high schoolers are more of a pain in the butt, but in actually the high school
think
teacher.
that.
But I was talking with Miss Richards, who was then the head of Crystal. I was like, no, I'm a middle school person. So I think in the years that I was in the just throughout my time teaching and then being at Crystal, I really began to appreciate kind of the K-8 scope and sequence arc. And while I love teaching MyFi, and that was really fun, it was guiding students and parents through those early adolescent years that I found really exciting and engaging and intriguing. And then I wanted a chance to do the whole thing, and the opportunity at Mount Tam came up. And so, even though I had just been very involved with designing the new middle school campus and it had yet to be built, I'd left to go to Mount Tam and have been there 10 years going into my 11th.
And Mount Tam is in Marin County.
Yeah. Yep. So just over the Golden Gate Bridge.
Oh, wow. That's so
Yeah.
cool. Is it
If
like,
you've been to Stinson Beach, if you've been to Muir
oh,
Woods, you've driven within a quarter mile of school.
oh, wow, that's so cool. And I was wondering, just touching on your like when you were the director of admission,
Mhm.
the middle school, I feel like because I was the advisee of the current middle school director of admission,
Okay.
so I know him pretty well. But
Yeah.
he was telling me how over the past few years, particularly this year, has gotten so much more competitive to get
Mhm.
in not only the high school, but even the middle school.
Yeah.
And I was wondering, because I remember taking my ISEE exams to get into Crystal, and, like doing the interview process, and it was just like, what's it like, Phil? Because I feel like elementary schoolers are so young. What's it like needing to make those decisions with kids? What do you look for?
Yeah.
If you can talk about.
So circling back to a phrase that I used earlier, you want people like students who are just authentic and who are, when you are meeting a fifth grader and their family, there's still a lot of variance, right? The fifth to eighth grade growth is unbelievable. And so at that point, you're really looking for, yes, there's kind of a academic, intellectual kind of baseline that in order to be at Crystal and thrive, you just need to be able to have X amount of horsepower or gain, right? But there are a lot of kids who have what that would be. And so, at least when I was at Crystal, we really thought about who is going to love the academics, not do them because they're supposed to do them, but love the academics and try things, get involved in things, especially because when I was there, the middle school was 36 kids.
Wait,
It was 36 kids in each grade, 108 total. So we doubled the size in the move to Belmont. And with 36 kids, but uh, also with 72 kids, you want kids who are not going to just do one thing. You want kids who are going to try new things, get involved. And so that to me was very much what we were looking for. And it was not optimizing for the smartest, the best, but really trying to build that richly authentic community.
yeah, I think that's definitely something really powerful because I feel like with a lot of other or like parents that I've seen, they're like, oh, my kid is taking pre-calculus in the fourth grade. It's just like trying to stack up accomplishments when in reality, I feel like you should be sending your kid to like extracurriculars, like finding out what they love. They'll
Yeah.
learn the same math in
Yeah.
5 years.
And that's something that in the admissions process, you can kind of sniff out. It's like, is this a kid who's going to like contribute, be a part of this, or versus just use Crystal as a rung in the ladder to climb?
Yeah, I feel like we should share this interview with prospective families now.
Yeah.
You find that helpful? Yeah, thank you for answering that
Yeah.
question. I know that wasn't on the list
Yeah.
that I sent you,
Yeah,
but I'm
please.
very curious. And I know we're running out of time. There's that
Yeah.
like Zoom
Yeah. Yeah.
going on. Sorry, I need to upgrade my account. Maybe I'll beg Mr. Anna Pitt for an
All
upgrade
good.
thing. But I just had one final question for you,
Please.
which was if you could tell your high school self one thing that you know now throughout all your experience, what would it be? And building off of that, do you have any specific advice for current student leaders or students trying to figure out what
Mhm.
they want to do with their lives as adults?
Yeah. I would just say it's continue to be your authentic self. Don't try to be something else. If that's if you're into something, just be into it. And that's great, right? That as you think about what college you want to go to, don't think about what is the right place to go, right? And instead just go to what feels right in the moment, what feels right in your heart. And it was interesting when I was a senior in high school, the college counselor tracked me down. And this was in a different era of college counseling when college counselors had far more influence and followed up with me and said, hey, where do you want to go? Do you want to go to Harvard or do you want to go to Stanford? And this is in February. So all the apps were in. And going to a boarding school in New England, the correct answer was Harvard, right? That is the place that you should aspire to want to go to. No one from my high school went to Stanford. One kid every other year. It was that place way out there, like who knows what happens out there,
Mhm.
right? And it just felt right to me at that point in my life that I wanted to do something that other people hadn't been doing. And I know for folks in the Bay Area, it's like, oh, that's the best thing that could possibly happen, right? But and we were talking about the race to nowhere briefly. One of my favorite things in a book is in Julie Lithcott Hames' How to Raise an Adult book. Appendix B, I think it might be Appendix A, is a list of every single undergraduate college represented in the Harvard Law School class, I think of 2014.
Yeah, oh, our college counseling office showed us this a few months ago.
And if you want economic security or a really good career, aka one that pays a lot, where you go to undergrad has very little impact. What matters is, do you go somewhere where you thrive and you do really when you're authentically who you are, like that's what matters.
Yeah, it's like it's not where you go, it's what you make out of it.
It's real, it entirely is, right? And so I think that would just be like, and it's tough advice because there's not an action. And it makes me think, sounds ridiculous, makes me think of playing golf and a Taoist expression. I was a religious studies major with a focus on East Asian religions, so you'll have to forgive the Taoism connection here. But there's an amazing Taoist teaching of Wu Wei. And Wu Wei is to try without trying. And if you've ever played golf, if you try really hard to hit the ball, you will shank it. It will go nowhere. If you're just like, whatever, swing the club, you're going to miss it. It's going to go flying sideways. You have to find that balance between, I'm trying to hit the ball, but I'm not trying to hit the damn ball, right? And I think that is the challenge, is to try, be engaged, but do it authentically. And you'll be amazed that when you do that, the ball will go far, like so much further than if you really try and hit the ball or you don't try at all. So I think like learning to be authentic and channel that Wu Wei will allow you to hit the ball of your life a lot further and also enjoy the game a lot more.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think
Yeah.
that's so powerful and something that I feel like a lot of high schoolers or just students, even in university, like need to hear. So yeah, thank you so much, Mr. Davis, for taking the time to speak with me. Not to throw shade on anyone else, but this is like probably one of the most like impactful, like interesting conversations I've had
Great.
so far.
Perfect. Thanks. It's just purely authentic, and Strudel the dog has been very happy to hear all of this.
That's great.
Mostly
Yeah,
because I've been leaned at a 30-degree angle and petting his belly the whole time.
I love that. That's so cute. Okay, so thank you so much for listening to my conversation with Mr. Andrew Davis. A huge thank you to Mr. Davis for taking the time to speak with me today, and thank you all so much for listening. I'll see you guys next time.